From the capital city of Charleston, West Virginia, this is Inside West Virginia Politics with Mark Curtis. Inside West Virginia Politics is brought to you by AARP West Virginia, your ally for real possibilities in the Mountain State.
Happy weekend, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Inside West Virginia Politics. I'm your host, Mark Curtis. We continue to dissect the fallout from the 2020 primary here in West Virginia, and there was no bigger race than the one we're about to talk to right now. Let me introduce Amy Grady. She is the Republican nominee for the state Senate from District 4, which includes Jackson, Mason, and Putnam counties.
Part of Roane County.
Part of Roane County, yes. Too? Yes. Amy is certainly well known now. You've become a household name in the state as the person who defeated incumbent sitting Senate President Mitch Carmichael, Republican of Jackson County. I mean, there was no bigger race statewide that night, no bigger upset. How'd you do it?
Hard work. I'll just tell you that. I'm the type of person that when somebody tells me I can't do something, I like to prove them wrong. So my husband and I worked really hard to do it. We knew what we needed to do. We knew we needed to start early. We knew Putnam County was key, and we worked really hard.
It's you know, an interesting race because a lot of people were focused on Mitch Carmichael, and I include people in the media like me, watching Mitch Carmichael, a well-known politician in the state, Jim Butler, a longtime delegate, member of the House of Delegates from Mason County. They were kind of like big marquee names. People know who they are, and you're an outsider, and you blow the doors off this thing and you beat them. I mean, you're a school teacher. Was that a big part of this?
It could have had a little bit. I think a lot of Mitch kind of got villainized. So I think that kind of gave it a little bit of a push. But I really tried to reach people on a personal level. So I tried to, when I talked to them, I tried to make sure that I could earn their trust. You know, and I felt like I was really successful at that. And once I earned their trust, they could spread that to their family and their friends. And I really feel like it was more of a, people are tired of politicians, you know, and they wanted somebody they felt like was real.
Yeah, and you work in an industry that's been front and center in state politics the last couple of years. Did you support the teachers' strike? Did you go down and picket with the other teachers at the Capitol?
In 2018, the very first strike, I did. We went door to door with the legislators, talking to everybody to tell them what our concerns were. And then in 2019, I voted not to walk out because I didn't support the reasons that we were walking out over the omnibus bill, so-called omnibus bill, I think we called it. But so yes, in 2018, I was very, very active in it, and we went and talked to all of our legislators, and we're not happy. I was not happy with what I heard and the experience that I had with the majority of them, and that prompted me to be interested in just doing it myself.
Yeah, I think a lot of people look at the teachers, they think they're all Democrats, and they were running against the Republican leadership of the House and the Senate. You're a Republican.
Yes.
Talk about your political philosophy and why you align as a member of the Republican Party.
Well, I consider myself very conservative. A lot of times people have this this belief that all teachers are far left-leaning or liberal, and they're not. There are a lot of conservative Republican teachers who have the same values that I do. You know, I believe in biblical principles. I am completely pro-life. I believe in our Constitution, and I think that our district is very conservative also. A lot of times I'm defending myself about being a Republican to teachers, and I'm defending being a teacher to my party. So it's a never-ending circle.
The legislature tackled a very controversial education issue this year, and that was teaching the Bible as an academic course, not as religious doctrine, but teaching it as an academic course in offering it as an elective. Students wouldn't have to take it in high school. Right. Did you support that, and if so, why?
Absolutely. I think it's important. Our nation was built on Christian principles and Christian values, and we are a Christian nation, one nation under God. So I believe that giving students, and as an elective is great, to learn more about the Bible, I think is a fantastic.
But if we're going to study the history of Christianity in that way, why not include other world religions such as Judaism and Muslims as well?
I'm not against having that be an elective either. Okay. You know, I mean, but I do believe that the Bible is important in our nation's history. Yeah. So,
what is the website where people can get information about you and learn more about your positions on issues and so forth?
Well, right now they can look me up on Facebook. It's just Amy Nicole Grady for West Virginia Senate District 4 on Facebook, my Facebook page, and I'm active on there often, and I respond to messages quickly, and it keeps me busy, but it's good.
I bet. As long as we're talking about the Bible, like we were a minute ago, people compare this as a David versus Goliath race. Well, I mean, was this? You were kind of a little-known person against two well-known politicians.
I saw a comment on Facebook that said, "Who the heck is Amy Nicole Grady?" when I won, and I said, "That's exactly right. Who am I? I'm just a regular person. I'm a teacher, a mom who cares about the district and really wants to do well." So, you know, I believe that. It's been wonderful, and it's been great, and you know, I didn't have the amount of money that my opponents did, and that really mattered. I only spent $2,600 to win this seat.
All right.
So far.
We're going to have your opponent on. You're running against the Democrat race. He's coming up next on the show, so we'll talk to him as well. And they'll probably have you both back in the fall and as we get closer to Election Day. Congratulations, Amy, Grady, and we'll talk soon. Okay?
Thank you so much.
More of Inside West Virginia Politics after this break. Stay with us.
Now back to Inside West Virginia Politics with Mark Curtis.
And welcome back to Inside West Virginia Politics. We've heard from the Republican winner in the 4th District senatorial race. Let's hear from the Democrat. Right now I want to introduce Bruce Ashworth. He is the Democratic nominee for the Senate District number 4, which is Jackson, Putnam, Mason, and a little bit of Roane County, right?
A little bit of Putnam, too. I mean, just half.
That's right. What did I do? I always miss one of them. Yeah. Anyway, this is obviously the most fascinating race in the state now because your opponent, Amy Grady, upset Mr. Carmichael. She beat the incumbent sitting state Senate president, the lieutenant governor. And, it was a political shocker. Let's talk about Bruce Ashworth. Who are you? What's your background? What make you run?
Well, I'm second generation union. I work for the roofers, waterproofers, and allied workers, local 185. I'm married. I got 4 kids. We live in Ripley. We made our home there in 1995, and we just had our first grandbaby, which we're happy with you know, excited about that.
Yeah, congratulations. What says I'm going to put my name on the ballot? What voice do you hear that tells you to do that, and why?
Well, for the last 8 to 10 years, I've been seeing the working families in West Virginia just get taken down. This fight for the right to work and just has taken out the unions in this state and pretty much run it to the ground. So I'm back in this race to help get the unions back up and running.
Do you think eventually, if the Democrats and the Senate's in play this year, all of a sudden there's some big marquee races that are open where the Democrats might be able to snag a Republican seat, this race being one of them, would you favor going back and repealing the right to work law, which has already been upheld by the state Supreme Court?
Definitely,
now?
And I want to bring back collective bargaining and
prevailing wage.
And prevailing wages. Yes.
Why do we need those things?
Well, it just sets a standard for wages in West Virginia. You know, we do collective bargaining. We get our wages set, and other trades, or even the same trades, have to pay that kind of money just so they can be competitive.
I asked your opponent about, she's obviously a school teacher, and she's, you know, education's a big issue to her. So I'll ask you, what would you do to change or fix or improve education in this state?
I think we need to give more power to the local boards' educations. Put more, lower the teacher-student ratios in the classrooms, which that's going to be happening now with the COVID pandemic. But
what about teacher pay? We had 2 successive years of 5% pay raises.
Yeah.
We're still, bordering states still pay more than we do.
Yeah, teachers' pay is an issue, but I believe their insurance, the PEIB, and their pension really needs to be funded.
This is your second attempt at public office?
The second attempt, 2016, I was running against Brian Prim, and once he entered the race, I kind of just sat back because he seemed to be more of a opponent for Carmichael at that time.
Why do you think, I mean, assess this. I mean, Mitch, you ran into this probably thinking you're going to run against Mitch Carmichael in the fall. All of a sudden, he's no longer on the ballot. I mean, what do you think of him being defeated, and what do you think the key was to this race on the other side of the aisle?
Well, Carmichael's had a kind of a tag on him for the last couple of years, and since the teachers really had their strike and went up against him on that made it a statewide issue and even a national issue. Yeah. But
did you support the teacher strikes, by the way? Amy Grady
yes.
supported the first one, but not last year's.
I supported it 100%. They really needed anything to do with education. I'm for. I mean, that seems to be the first thing that gets cut, and we need to put the money back into it and support our teachers.
I'm going to give you about 30 seconds just to sum up who you are and why you're running and why people should vote for you. And don't forget to pitch your website, okay?
Okay, I'm all for the working families in my district and the state, and that's really who I'm going to be fighting for.
And the website where folks can get more information, or a Facebook page?
The website is Bruce for West Virginia Senate, and the Facebook is Bruce Ashworth. Just follow me on that and like me.
Bruce Ashworth, thanks for joining us this week. Best of luck on the campaign trail. We'll be talking when the fall election campaign heats up, okay?
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. We'll have a very special final segment this week on Inside West Virginia Politics as we honor our high school and college graduates. Stay with us for that.
Now back to Inside West Virginia Politics with Mark Curtis.
And welcome back to Inside West Virginia Politics. All of a sudden, the race for governor in West Virginia is getting a bit more crowded. We know, of course, the Republican incumbent Jim Justice won the primary. Democrat Ben Salango, a county commissioner here in Kanawha County, is the nominee of his party. And joining us right now is an independent in the race. He's Delegate Marshall Wilson, who represents Berkeley County, has for 2 terms. And you are running for governor. Marshall, why are you running for governor as an independent?
Well, Mark, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. Effectively, what it comes down to is that, as far as I can tell, based on my research and frankly my personal knowledge of Governor Justice, neither of the primary party candidates is focused on constitutional governance, on protecting and upholding the individual natural rights of each individual citizen of the state. And the problem with that is actually the only valid reason for any government to exist, is to uphold and defend the individual natural rights of each of its citizens. And what we've got here is we've got a bunch of people who think that the government is the solution to everyone's problem, when the fact of the matter is, more often than not, the government is the cause of the problems. Specifically, the most recent example I can think of, and you probably are aware that I have an action pending in the West Virginia Supreme Court of Appeals against Governor Justice to compel him, it's a writ of mandamus, or a petition for a writ of mandamus, to compel him to actually function according to his constitutionally mandated functions in the West Virginia Constitution. And the simple fact of the matter is that his imposition of statewide shutdowns of certain businesses, compelling people to stay in their homes, that sort of thing is completely unconstitutional and is completely contrary to the principles upon which the United States and the state of West Virginia were founded. And, somebody has to do something about this. Someone has to stand up and say, we are founded on these principles, this is who we are, the Constitution matters, and the government has only the right to function within these constitutional parameters. At a bare minimum, Governor Justice should have called in the legislature to consult with the people's representatives before he made a bunch of decisions that destroyed businesses and off-track people's lives.
I should point out you were twice elected as a Republican, but you've never been shy about criticizing the leadership of your own party, whether it's the governor, the speaker, or anyone else.
No, sir, and I want to be very clear about this. The reason that I've been a Republican since I was in college, which was a long, long time ago, is because I believed that the Republican Party was about small government, about accountable government, about fiscal responsibility. That's why I was a Republican. And then it became very clear to me through my 4 years of service as a delegate that I simply was mistaken, that that's not what the West Virginia Republican Party is about. And I actually started at sort of a quest where I started at the Berkeley County level, where I was a member of the Republican Executive Committee, and I tried to address those issues to bring a little more ethical consideration to the discussion. And I was told at each level to shut up. And I finally got to the point where I was speaking face to face with the chairwoman of the West Virginia Republican Party, and she basically told me that my opinion meant nothing. And she said, you think just because you're a delegate you can come in here and make these accusations? I said, no ma'am, I believe because I am a registered Republican voter in the state of West Virginia, I have a right to hold my elected leadership, and the members of the leadership of the West Virginia Republican Party is elected by the Republican people, by the Republican voters. I said, because I am a voter, a registered Republican voter, I have a right to hold you accountable to our shared principles. And she effectively told me that I didn't know what I was talking about and I needed to go home. So I went home. And I decided that I needed to do these things as an independent. So before the 2020 session, yes, sir.
Well, I don't mean to interrupt, but if you were governor today, would you reopen the state completely and have all businesses opening and operating as normal if you were governor today?
I would not reopen the state. I would simply rescind the closing of the state and allow the people to do what they think is right. This is not the governor's business. The governor doesn't have a right to reopen the state because the governor never had the right to close the state. So in effect, yes, the state would be reopened, but I want to be very clear about the fact that it would not be my authority to reopen the state simply because the governor has no right to close the state. Now, propose measures to keep people safer? Absolutely. Provide executive branch support to those operations? Absolutely. Compel people to shut down their businesses? Not a chance.
All right.
That is completely unacceptable.
All right, Delegate Wilson, real quick, we're down to about 15 seconds. Give your website or Facebook page. Where can people find out more about Marshall Wilson, Independent for Governor of West Virginia?
Well, my website's still in development, but the Facebook page that you need to go to is at Marshall, M-A-R-S-H-A-L-L, 4 F-O-R-W-V, at Marshall 4WV. Enter that in the search bar and Facebook, and it'll bring you right to me.
All right, Delegate Marshall Wilson. We'll have more after this break. Stay with us.
Now back to Inside West Virginia Politics with Mark Curtis.
This past week, we hosted a special program on our statewide network across West Virginia, My Lost Moment, Class of 2020. It was a salute to high school and college seniors who did not get to have a traditional graduation this year because of COVID-19. People did find unique ways to honor them, as reporter Lily Bradley found out.
Mark, social media can be a beautiful gift, especially in the world of social distancing. A Facebook page dedicated to West Virginia seniors is the perfect example. With no prom and no graduation, parents are getting creative, turning to Facebook to highlight their seniors. The Adopt a Senior West Virginia Edition Facebook page was created less than a month ago. Since then, it's grown immensely, boasting more than 3,000 members. The page was created by Catherine Robillard. And Catherine, where do you live?
I live in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Okay, so what are your ties to West Virginia? What are your ties to the Mountain State?
Actually never even been, but my boyfriend is from West Virginia and his little brother Ty Atkinson is graduating this year.
Ty Atkinson is part of South Charleston High School's class of 2020. He should be getting ready for graduation and playing his last few games of baseball as a Black Eagle.
All the relationships you build and all that, just everything is gone.
Ty was one of the literal thousands of seniors posted on the Facebook group by his mom, Penny.
Some of my buddies, they were like, your mom put you up for adoption. And I was like, I did not do nothing. So I was like, and then I checked it, then I found out it's a pretty cool thing.
He's been adopted by more than 5 people.
Everybody's behind these guys. Everything they've gone through since, what, March? You know, no school, no prom, now probably no graduation, no sports. I mean, you know, just little words of encouragement. And, you know, they've come to realize that West Virginians, They take care of their kids.
A card with words of encouragement, a gift card to a favorite restaurant. Nothing huge, but something simple. Something that leaves this senior with a smile on his face.
With everything going on, just something little just means a lot.
Now, the Facebook page has since closed, but thousands of West Virginia students were adopted. There was also a way for seniors in the foster system to be adopted as well, so no one was left out. Reporting in Charleston, I'm Lily Bradley.
Since most formal graduations were canceled, the traditional speeches by valedictorians and class presidents were not delivered. But My Lost Moment class of 2020 gave an opportunity for those voices to be heard.
We are the class of 2020. Not only that, we are the class of grit, the class of perseverance, and the class of adaptability. We have undergone unique circumstances, but yet stand here, diploma in hand, ready to take on the next chapter of our lives.
These past few weeks have given me reflection and understanding that this was our time and nothing can take that away. For if it wasn't for the hopes and dreams, the sails we have would not be filled with winds and direction. We would be lost in the sea of misery instead of the path of exploration, wonder, and amazement.
To those of you who are struggling in anything in life, know that hard work and determination can help you through the most difficult times. You just have to believe in yourself, surround yourself with people who are positive and encouraging, and be willing to put in the work it takes to succeed.
It is important to remember the most important tool: courage. Having the courage to be different and strong in an ever-changing world that lies before us. You are more powerful than you know and have every opportunity to be the person that you want to be.
Always be kind, always be a good friend, and always be brave, because you will now always be a pioneer.
To quote Neil Gaiman, now go and make interesting mistakes. Make amazing mistakes. Make glorious and fantastic mistakes. Break the rules. Leave the world more interesting for you being here.
If there is one thing that I know for sure, it is that we will come out of this pandemic stronger than before. The resilience that we have shown, students and staff alike, is remarkable and has rewritten a chapter in the history textbooks of the future.
We have a school to represent. We have a state to save. We have a country to serve, and we have a world to change. Class of 2020, let's go change the world.
They are some pretty remarkable and resilient young adults, and we want to congratulate all members of the class of 2020 for a job well done. That's it for Inside West Virginia Politics. We'll see you back here next week. And remember, we are a podcast, so download us from your favorite podcast vendor. Thanks for watching.